Alright, so just going to show you how we wire up our 4JJ1 conversions. So this is a 2009 RC Colorado loom, so it's sort of the same from 07 to 12. So your RA7 Rodeos, RC Colorados, and your Isuzu D-Max. This works for both Delphi and Transtron ECU. The loom's pretty much the same, just different plugs on the computer. So we use the whole sort of body loom. Obviously unplug the doors and stuff, don't use all that, but just the dash, pull the dash out. And the engine loom is all on the engine, so that just plugs straight into the computer pretty much, and a couple into this fuse box here. So it's pretty straightforward. So we keep this fuse box. So this is an automatic, so it's got this extra plug there for the transmission, which is on the engine loom, just plugs straight into there. So then you got your alternator and 12 volt positive for the battery, and then that other plug is alternator as well, which is on the engine loom. So most of the time, depending on where you put this, it'll plug straight back in there. Some of them you just have to extend them a little bit. So then there's a few earths throughout the loom, which you just bolt back onto the body wherever you can. So hook up that earth, don't plug in this stuff, that's for the ABS. And you've got this grommet where it goes through the firewall. So it comes inside, there's a lot of stuff not used. There's fan speed resistor for the blower motor. So these two plugs here plug into the other half of the loom inside. So they plug on. Then there's that loom that runs across. So if you're using an automatic, you'll have, this will go into the center console. And you have this plug here for the power and third button for the for the transmission. And then this other loom that comes across is the transmission computer. So you just got to mount that somewhere. And then it goes across. Pretty much none of this stuff is used, apart from these ones, which is your dash cluster. So we use the D-Max dash cluster as well. Then you come across to about the driver's side footwell. There's another fuse box. So this loom plugs into it. This loom plugs in. So then over here there's a couple of more earths, just always pays to hook them up. So we've got our OBD, and we use the key with the key reader. So literally all you have to do is, if you just sit it there, it will actually start. So we normally just put that up under the dash with the key in it. That way you don't have to remove the security off the ECU or anything like that. And then off this is your 6 ignition wires. So literally just have to splice in the ignition, and that's pretty much it for inside. Come across back to the passenger side. Under the seat, you run this loom, another earth on it. This is the fuel pump wiring harness. So there's a plug, this plug here comes up through the floor, and this loom plugs back into it. The only thing you have to do is plug this back together, this red one, cut it inside and jump it to earth. That will give you earth for your fuel pump. Then comes back, we keep the factory fuel filter. So you got the plugs on that to sense the flow, if it's blocked or if there's water in it. And then back to the factory fuel pump. So we actually use the factory fuel pump as well. So patrols, Land Cruisers, you can actually fit that pump in the tank. So that way your fuel sender works, pump works, everything works like factory. Then, so we come back across. So that's all the inside stuff. We come back inside the engine bay. You have to mount this. It comes across, all this stuff here is lights. Pretty much none of it is used, except for this plug, which is actually broken. But that is the condenser fan relay for the aircon. So there's actually a relay in that fuse box, thermo relay, which runs this condenser fan. so that's pretty easy to wire up if you want to run that. Then it comes across in front of the radiator. Got your mass airflow meter, plugs back in there. We normally use the factory D-Max airbox, or you can actually use an RG Colorado one. Sensor goes straight into it. It's a lot bigger box and fits a lot nicer for conversions. Come back across, another earth, just hook that up, get your computer there. Then obviously your other loom is all on the engine, plugs back in there. This one comes through the driver's side firewall, and you've got two plugs here. So you got your pedal, and then this plug plugs back into this loom here. So it's pretty straightforward. There's literally, once everything's plugged back in, 6 ignition wires, and jump that fuel pump, and it'll run. Alright, so we've got the loom in. It's most of the way in, so we've got our main fuse box. I've just got the bottom off. There's a couple little mods you have to do, but I'll show you how to do that. So we've got our alternator and power for the fuse box. Did have to extend them just a little bit, just for the battery. It just depends on really what car you're putting them in, and whereabouts you sit this. But these fit pretty good here. There's a bit of a hole, so just had to extend them a little bit. Pretty straightforward. So we've got our earth on here, and we've got our wiring plugs plugged in, and this one is for the transmission, the automatic, so that's plugged in. So the loom comes forward. It's all sort of tucked away at the moment, starting to clean everything up. So it comes along the front of the radiator. So we've got our mass airflow meter. That's actually an RG Colorado airbox. Sensor, just pull the old one out, put your RC Colorado or D-Max on straight in there, and plug that in. So it comes up pretty good. And then we've got our ECU mounted here. So that's plugged in, and we've got our earths. So Transtron computer again. It has these extra wiring plugs there. So then it just goes through with a firewall there, and there's 2 plugs on that. Just the accelerator pedal, and then there's another plug that goes back into the loom. So I'll show you where that goes. So this main harness out of the fuse box goes back inside, and then so we got them through. We've got these 2 plugs, this loom and this loom. So the smaller one just here will run down under your seat, this one. So it's got an earth on it, and then we're obviously running the factory fuel pump, so it just plugs in here. You'll run your other loom underneath the floor, and we'll plug back up there like that. So that's still using the factory fuel filter, and then it's got the factory fuel pump in the tank. The only mod you have to do to this is this red wire. It needs to be earthed, so just run that over and put it back onto earth. That's actually the main earth supply for the fuel pump, and it thinks that the airbags aren't plugged in, so it won't give earth to the fuel pump. Just when the car's in an accident, it cuts the fuel pump straight away. So you just got to jump that back to earth, and then your other looms need to go across pretty much wherever you can put them. This will all get tucked up under here like that one. It's already through the back there. There is a little loom if you've got an automatic to run in the center console for your power and third. Then we'll jump across. With the dash. So we've got your other looms just come across wherever you can sort of put them neat. So we've got our ignition wires here. So 6 ignition wires. So just splice them in to your factory ignition. I've got a wiring loom on what does what. So we use the factory ignition to power up the body of the car, to run all the lights and stuff, and then it's also spliced in so it powers up the Isuzu side. to run the engine and the dash cluster and everything that's associated with that. We've got a pedal, it's mounted up there. So the other wiring loom that comes through from the driver's side, it's just got the pedal plug, and then there's another plug that plugs back into this wiring loom. And then we've got our other fuse box tucked up there. Let's sort of see it. So there's a few wires that plug into that fuse box, so just sort of put it up there in the footwell above the pedal so it doesn't get caught on stuff. And we've got our Isuzu key reader. So you literally just put the key in there and it will start and run. You don't need to turn the security off or anything like that. And then we're using the Isuzu dash cluster. So we've got that in there. There's a few wires and stuff you got to splice in. So we've got a bit of a diagram. So this is the Isuzu plug. Just sort of listed what's what colour wires for splicing into the dash cluster, just so you get the right symbol. So when you turn the indicators on for the body of the car, it lights up the indicators on the dash cluster and whatnot. Okay, so all the wiring looms in the engine bay, everything's pretty much finished up now. So the power for the battery, just had to extend that a little bit, just so it would reach. And then you got your alternator that goes down on the engine loom there, and then we got the transmission control. There's just another engine plug here, and then your other alternator one, which is all there on the engine loom, so that plugs straight back in. The only thing you have to do in this box is, so there's a few of these little clips, and pull the top off, and just in the back of it, you got this fuel pump relay. So just this orange wire with a black stripe. You just have to put that to earth. So I just found an earth one here, just spliced it into that, and that's all you got to do. Get your fuel pump running, and then the which one is it? Thermo relay. So next to the fuel pump there, got your thermo relay. So this is just for the aircon. So the green wire, yellow stripe. So this pink wire actually goes inside. And it's just goes through the fan switch, so earth through the fan switch, through the AC button, and through the thermostat. So any one of those three things can turn it off, and that's just your earth trigger to bring on the thermo relay. That'll run the AC compressor and the thermo fan on the front. So that's all that one is, just a trigger earth. So then everything else, so you got obviously battery stuff's hooked up, so half that is on the engine loom, and then the other bit that just plugs into the fuse box over there. The other just runs across in front of the radiator. Got our mass airflow meter, so that's actually an RG Colorado airbox. So the sensor goes straight in there, same bolt pattern, sort of thing, just plugs on. That's sorted. Got your ECU, so this one is a actually a Transtron ECU, so it just has these two extra plugs which are on the engine loom, so you just got to plug that back together. So you got your engine loom comes down, plugs straight into the ECU, and then goes back through the firewall just here for your pedal, and the other plug that plugs back into the loom. And then for the dash cluster, everything's been done, spliced in. So obviously the door switch works, so shut the door, that goes out. Your handbrake, your blinkers, the lights, and your high beam, all that stuff still works. And then you also get this, so you've got your average fuel, so this is getting 12.6 kilometers per 100. This all still works, so trip meter, instant fuel, fuel gauge, temp, and then this is obviously a automatic, so you still get your selector, which is actually on the gearbox itself, so it's in the loom, so it's pretty simple. You don't have to stuff around with that. It just, as long as you're running the dash cluster, it'll plug back in. And then you also got your power and your third, so that will come up on the cluster as well. So power drive will start in third. So, all right, so with these ignition wires, you actually have to splice this into your car's factory ignition. So say you're putting it in a patrol, you'll keep the patrol wiring obviously to run the body of the car, so it's still going to run the lights, the windows and everything associated with that. Then you're just splicing in these 6 ignition wires just to power up the Isuzu side, so it'll run the engine, the dash cluster, the fuel pump, transmission if you're keeping the auto. So I've just numbered these, what they do, the colour of them. So you got accessory on and drops while cranking, ignition on, no drop while cranking, 12 volts, ignition on, drops, you got your start, and then you got the 12 volt. So with a patrol, so this is a series 1. I haven't done a new one yet, so I'm not sure if the colours change, but you just sort of just join the two together. So with the patrol, it only has 5 ignition wires, so you just join your 6 and your 3, which is your 2 12 volts, 2 white with a red, so that's obviously the 12 volts for the patrol. And then for a 105 series, so sort of don't really worry too much about the numbers. For the Toyota side, they're a bit backwards, but so you're still just joining across. So Isuzu, Toyota, they're obviously the same colour. Across this one, you actually have to join the 2 and the 4. The blue, white, sort of pretty straightforward. Just helps with the colours. All right, now for your dash cluster wiring. So this is a picture of the dash cluster plug. So looking at it from this way, and then the smaller one, looking at it like that. So this is for the symbols in the dash cluster. So what you'll actually do is obviously peel the stuff back, get a bit of length out of it, and you'll cut off and discard this side, and then you'll splice in from the body of the car into this side, so it sends the right signal. So I've just sort of numbered them and then written what they do with their coloured wires. So for these ones, so your airbag light will always stay on. So what you actually have to do is cut it and add 12 volts, or you can splice it and add 12 volts to it, and they'll put the light out. The same with the ABS one, you actually have to cut or splice it and add a negative, and that'll put the light out. And then you've got this service light, which you can just cut off. Just cut that wire, and that'll take the light off the dash cluster, unless you can obviously get them turned off in the ECU, but that just, without having to touch the ECU, you can just cut those and then join those wires back up with the negative and a positive, and that'll put the light out. So then the rest of them, so you got like your door open, so it's a negative. It's wants a negative signal to put the symbol on. Headlights, so that wants a 12 volt signal, put that on. Seatbelts is a negative. Handbrakes are negative. Then you got your four-wheel drive low. So your left blinker wants 12 volts. High beam, that wants 12 volts. Then actually in the other plug is the right blinker that also wants 12 volts. So there's only one wire in that smaller plug. So that just gets everything working for the dash cluster. So the body of the car will talk to the dash cluster, and you just get the right symbols. So you can see when your blinkers are on, when your high beams are on, when your headlights are on.